All right, for our final talk, our final speaker is Hamish Cameron. He is a lecturer in classics at Victoria University of Wellington. His main areas of research are the history and geography of the Roman Near East, ideological representations of imperialism in classical literature, and the reception of ideas about the ancient world in modern analog and digital games. His talk today is titled Scuttle Back to Your Wine, You Sacks of Uselessness, the Roman Army in Assassin's Creed Origins.
Thank you, Rocky. Good morning, everyone. While I get my screen set up here. Thanks also to Meredith, Dan, and Roger, and everybody who has helped put together this conference. It's been fantastic, even though I wasn't here for the very early part because of the time zones. I have noticed during the past couple of talks that I've had a couple of connection issues, so I hope that I don't have anything like that during this. So here we go. So Assassin's Creed Origins, published in 2017 by Ubisoft, is set in late Hellenistic Egypt and covers events from 49 to 43 BCE. The player takes the role of an Egyptian named Bayek, and occasionally his wife Aya, both of whom seek to avenge the death of their son by finding and killing the members of a secret organization controlling Egypt. So this talk is very much a work in progress. So it differs a little bit from the previous two, also in that it's not as focused, or it's not particularly focused on masculinity. I've been thinking a little bit about that since this panel was put together, but mostly I'm concerned with issues of imperialism and the Roman representation of the army, obviously. So I'm going to begin with a description of the game and a discussion of some of the relevant gameplay aspects that allow the narrative to be interpreted in the way that I'm doing it, before introducing addressing the introduction of Roman power into the narrative, and then the arguments that the game makes about the Roman army and its role in Roman imperialism. So Origins is an open world action role-playing game. Open world games are defined by the ability of players to move freely around large game spaces and complete objectives in their own order with fewer restrictions than a traditional level-based game. Role-playing games, the role-playing game aspect means that the player controls a character with a personality or skills that might develop in some way as directed by player choice. They're usually immersive and highly narrative in the world and in the storytelling. So as I mentioned above, Origins is a story of Bayek of Siwa and his wife Aya. Bayek is a Medjay, a sort of paramilitary ranger tasked with helping the people of Egypt. He's technically under the auspices of a pharaoh, but in reality, he's an independent agent. And the narrative opens in medias res with Bayek killing a member of the Order of Ancients, a secret organization responsible for the death of their son. And as the main plot progresses around Ptolemaic Egypt, the player encounters new regions to explore, each filled with new local problems. So here's a map of the world of Assassin's Creed Origins. It's an evocatively abstracted representation of Egypt, focused on Alexandria up in the north, the Nile Delta, and the Fayum, but significantly warped to encompass Siwa and Cyrenaica in the same scope. In terms of scale, there is a YouTube channel called How Big is the Map, where the person who runs it will start at one edge of the map and just move continuously across the map. And it takes 45 minutes to go from the top to the bottom, just basically hitting forward. So it's a very big space. So the inclusion of Cyrene in particular, and here's a map of like a real world map of the situation by comparison. The inclusion of Cyrene in particular allows for a historically authentic space for the game to explore the effect of Roman power, especially military power, on a local population. So you can see how there's a lot of compression, particularly in the desert areas to the west, to bring those areas close into the game space. Through the avatar of Bayek, the player engages with the world by moving, including climbing, swimming, running, and riding. And I've separated off sneaking as a separate thing because it's sort of its own most particularly important aspect. Fighting, shooting, and assassinating, looting, and interacting with objects and clues, and that includes NPCs, non-player characters. There aren't any conversational choices in Origins. You just click the interact button when you talk to somebody, and then you get the dialogue cutscene, and I'll show one of those later. So free play with the environment is structured according to levels of the character. As the player discovers new areas, explores challenge areas, which involve killing and looting, completes quests, and so on, Bayek becomes more powerful and resilient and gains access to new abilities. The basic game allows your character to reach level 40. So the player can look at the map to locate themselves relative to spaces in the virtual environment at any time. So this is somebody's map from pretty early on in the game. You start in Siwa over here on the left, and one of the first places you go is Alexandria. So that's why those places are revealed. Once the fog is clear, the map also shows the location of many side quests, allowing the player to navigate directly to missions appropriate for their level. And so here's a zoom in on the area of the Green Mountains, which I'll talk about quite extensively later. The exclamation marks are side quest markers, and all of the other icons reflect places where you can go to find something in particular. The red ones are military locations. So as an open world game, the player has almost total freedom of movement around the environment. And this has important implications when you're considering a narrative and the narrative structure of the game. Because you can approach the geographical and narrative space in a variety of ways, and it's hard to predict that as a sort of analyst of the game. In particular, the verticality of Assassin's Creed games, the fact that it is important to be able to climb to very high spaces, means that all of the mountains are accessible, and you can't use mountains. The game designers can't use mountains to close off spaces as they might be able to in other games. So movement can be controlled in two ways. One by the levels, introducing friction to an area. You have to be of certain strength to be able to take on the enemies there or to be able to do anything. And narratively, by having a strong plot that encourages movement in certain directions and through certain spaces. All right. Oh, I see, I advanced that too early. Okay, so the narrative structure has three levels. There are main quests that advance the central narrative, and then there are a variety of types of side quests. So in terms of the main plot of the game that progresses through these main quests, each of which requires you to be at a certain level basically to engage properly with the material. The game starts in Siwa for the first 5 levels, where Bayek explores that area. And then levels 5 to 10, it moves to the region approaching Alexandria. And then once you get to Alexandria, you start engaging with the sort of more substantial elements of the main plot, start meeting historically accurate character or historical characters that is one of the joys of the Assassin's Creed series that people are very excited about. So here you meet Cleopatra for the first time. During this sort of first 10 levels, you're also finishing off assassinating the first 5, this lower tier of the members of the order. The next 20 odd levels, you are going down the Nile, going to Memphis and the Fayum, and finishing off the second tier orders of members of the order. Level 31, you return to the Nile Delta, where you meet Cleopatra again and begin killing the third tier members of the order. And then the final section, and that's the one I'm going to focus on mostly, Bayek returns to Siwa and then heads north to Cyrenaica to finish off the order. And this is the part that I mentioned allows them to use the Roman army and Roman power in the game. So the overall plot of the game is a revenge story, and revenge and its effects on those who seek it is a repeated theme in various side quests. But another important theme is the social cultural conflicts of colonial oppression. And this is a particular focus of the quests in the Fayum, where conflict between Hellenistic Greek and native Egyptian culture manifests through local side quests and environmental storytelling, especially architecture, overheard conversations, and other visual and textual elements of the game environment. There's a lot to be said about this, and probably already has been, especially by people in this community. I know many people, including some here today, have given talks on Origins before. So this is a good moment to remind everybody of my email address and my Twitter. If you want to get in touch with me and tell me something I've missed or something that I haven't, that I should consider or read, then please do so. As I said, this is very much a work in progress, so input is welcomed. So Roman power enters the game when the player moves to Alexandria. There, and for the first time, so about level 10. There, Bayek and Aya become entangled with Cleopatra and meet Roman forces, first under Pompey and then Julius Caesar. So the first interaction with Rome is in the main quest, Pompeius Magnus, at level 20, in which Aya transports a chest of gold to Pompey to buy his support. The second occurs in the main quest, the Crocodile's Jaws. The Roman owner of the Crocodilopolis arena is using gladiators as muscle for organized crime. His name, incidentally, is Felix Martialis, which suggests to a Roman historian that he's a freedman, but I don't know if I'd want to push the game that much. In that same quest, we learn that that an ally of Bayek, a Siwan warrior named Kensa, had been captured and enslaved by a high-ranking Roman, Lucius Septimius. Near Heraklion, getting towards the end of the game now, a series of level 31 side quests feature Bayek working with another Egyptian ally, Tahira, who is attempting to stop Roman hunters capturing animals for the arena at Rome. And then in Heraklion, the main quest, The Way of the Gabiniani, pits Bayek against the historical Gabiniani, Ptolemy the 12th and 13th Roman mercenaries, who are controlled by the Order of the Ancients, the main bad guys. And they're attempting to murder Cleopatra in this mission, and you have to stop them. After that, a series of connected quests break the open world format briefly and funnel you into a space where you have to follow the linear plot. And that serves to recenter the overall background tension from the oppression of Egypt at the hands of Ptolemaic power to the oppression of Egypt at the hands of Roman power, and also the oppression of Cyrenaica. This also switches the center of power of the Order of the Ancients from the Ptolemaic court to the Roman court and Roman governors. The Roman appearances in the plot up to this point set up the portrayal of Roman power that will come in the final part of the game. In particular, the Romans who appear in the first 3/4 of the game are seen as corrupt, available for purchase, immoral, especially by 21st century standards, which is what the game sort of expects you to be thinking about, brutal and exploitative. Julius Caesar initially provides a contrast to this, fighting side by side with Bayek and seeming to share his desire for justice. However, in the conclusion to the main quest sequence that pivots the game's antagonism, Caesar's heel turn is confirmation of the true nature of Roman power as treacherous and corrupting. As Tahira says to Bayek in the quest, The Aftermath, Cleopatra has been poisoned by Rome and we by her treachery. So in the last section of the game, Bayek returns to Siwa and to the open world format to pursue Caesar's ally Flavius Metellus, proconsul of Cyrene. This level 32 main quest, The Final Weighing, connects with a variety of other main quests and side quests from level 32 to 38 as Bayek travels north through the regions of Liboe, the Green Mountains, and finally to Cyrenaica in pursuit of Flavius. And so here's a zoom in on the Green Mountain area. This is a slightly more explored version of the map that I showed earlier. The blue markers are the annotations showing where the various side quests are. The first step of the quests in the Green Mountains are dominated by 3 Roman characters: the architect Vitruvius, the legate General Agrippa, and the centurion Brutus Severus. The first step of the final weighing is to check in at a farm in the Green Mountains, that's around here, for signs of Flavius's passing. On arriving, Bayek discovers that General Agrippa has conscripted or enslaved most of the local inhabitants of the area. An old woman tells Bayek, "Red cloaks and that milksop with the lion's head," that's Agrippa, "took anyone who could work. Farmhands, my son Cade, everyone." This sequence opens a new yellow side quest, Playing with Fire, which leads Bayek to rescue Kade from Agrippa's fortress. There we discover that Agrippa is manufacturing chemical weapons, a deadly flammable formula invented by Vitruvius. When you track down Vitruvius, the quest intersects with another quest, the Good Roman, which you must complete first. You can actually do the Good Roman before you do the Playing with Fire quest, but if you haven't done it, then it forces you to do it in the middle. The opening cutscene of that quest sets up the contrast between Vitruvius and the Roman army. So Vitruvius is characterized as a good Roman, both by his dialogue, his actions, and by inference from the name of the quest, with the implication that most Romans are not good. As Vitruvius says, contrary to popular belief, not all Romans are your enemy. In the world of Origins, it is certainly the case that most Romans the player will encounter are hostile combat opponents. Narratively, they are almost all members of the Roman army or of the secret organization that Bayek and Aya oppose. In this scene, the Roman army are presented as bullies, quick to use violence, and unwilling to help even a good Roman. Vitruvius says that the general's idiots are not real soldiers, but rather sacks of uselessness who would rather drink wine than performing the policing role he requires to provide water to the local farms. When Playing with Fire continues, Bayek confronts Vitruvius about Agrippa's chemical weapons manufacturing. And Bayek says, I believed you when you said you cared for the Siwans here. And all the while there are more at the Citadel, forced to work on a weapon you created. Vitruvius replies, please understand, Bayek, I was not always so focused on architectural wonders such as this aqueduct. As a hot-headed youth, I came up with many means of death and destruction. One of those was a Greek fire of sorts. Thus, Vitruvius fits into the contemporary narrative trope of the formerly naive scientist who creates something destructive, which then falls into the wrong hands against his wishes. Bayek proceeds to recover the formula, which involves looting it from Agrippa's dead body. In the concluding dialogue to Playing with Fire, Vitruvius draws a contrast between being a good man and a good Roman, and Bayek affirms the title of the intermediate quest. So Vitruvius says he was a good Roman, but he never understood that that doesn't mean you can't be a good man. And Bayek affirms by saying, but you are a good man, Vitruvius. I have seen that in your words and deeds. Leaving aside that Vitruvius is a paternalistic colonizer whose concern for his workers seems primarily driven by his own ownership over their productive labor, Bayek's statement further underlines the contrast between Vitruvius and the army, as led here by a man who must have the ability to manufacture chemical weapons prized from his cold, dead hands. Just briefly on the last figure, Brutus Severus, whose name is extremely evocative for English speakers. He appears directly in one mission, but is referred to in letters found in 2 others and in several military outposts in the region. He is responsible for torturing spies and crucifying freedom fighters. That's how the game describes them. In separate quests, Bayek rescues one of each. One of the latter, or rescues several of each, sorry. One of the latter is a childhood friend of Bayek's son who must be rescued from a crucifixion site. And this is an image from the Discovery tour where you can get a little voiceover tour of a Roman crucifixion site. So in conclusion, the first thing to note is that the Roman army dominates the depiction of Romanness in the game. Every Roman antagonist and almost every major Roman character in the game is a member of either the Roman army or is at least connected to it. Every Roman political figure is represented as a soldier and conceptualized according to their military role. And so I've shown you most of these people already. We've got Caesar at top left, Agrippa with the lion's head, Brutus with the big shield. Down at the left, this is Flavius Metellus, the proconsul of Cyrene, dressed in military gear. He's even carrying weapons. You end up having a conversation / fight with him in the Temple of Mars, which is the major temple on the Acropolis at Cyrene in the game. All of these Roman military commanders are treacherous and brutal. Even when they might initially seem to be on the player's side, as in the case of Caesar, they soon show their true colors. The army, as the instrument of Roman imperial power, is an oppressive occupying force and a blight on a conquered population, enslaving, exploiting, and enacting arbitrary violence, like the arbitrary violence I'm enacting on my cat right now by not feeding it or not letting him outside. They refuse to perform genuine policing functions that might render their presence as anything other than parasitic, even at the request of a Roman citizen like Vitruvius. And I quite like the contrast in the game map here of the enormous aqueduct right next to the enormous Roman citadel. Vitruvius and his aqueduct represent Roman cultural power as a mirror alternative to the army, a boon for the people of occupied Cyrene without consideration of any negative effects on the local population. Origins presents as entirely positive Vitruvius's imposition of an enormous civil works project with conscript labor to allow a local underclass to produce food for a Roman-controlled Greek city. So all in all, these positions are not untrue as such. Origen's position on the Roman army is not so different from what we see in Apuleius or Josephus, and its Janus-like presentation of Roman occupation as a whole has some resemblance to that of Tacitus's Agricola, where the expansion of Roman power and the glory of individual Romans is a positive thing, even if the victims of that expansion have legitimate objections and grievances. However, the presentation is remarkably consistent, partial, and lacking in nuance, an abstraction into black and white to serve the series' ideology rather than the complicated exploration of imperialism. Thank you.